This is Talk Sport Extra Time. A very good morning to you. I'm Mike Graham, and I'm delighted to say that Mr. Mike Porky Parry has joined me for his first stint of the week. A very good morning to you.
Yeah, good morning, Mike.
You're looking a lot better than the last time I saw you, which was approximately 7 p.m. on Saturday evening, I should say.
Oh, why was that
after
then?
a very, very pleasant day at Crystal Palace.
Extremely pleasant day.
Enjoyed it very much.
Thank you, Mr. Palton, the marketing chief there, and Crystal Palace. That's a fantastic restaurant they've got there. It's called Speroni's, right?
Yeah.
Which, incidentally, you didn't even know is the same name as the goalkeeper of Crystal Palace.
I didn't
of course.
know that, no.
That went whoosh straight over your head,
Well,
of course, you know.
I didn't
Trained
have a chance
observer.
to check the goalkeeper's
What a
name.
laugh.
The thing that bothers me slightly is that I've been telling people what a great game it was, and everybody else that was at the game says it was really dull and boring.
Well, it wasn't for me.
I didn't think that.
It wasn't for me, because if your team's involved, you're always on the edge of your seat, hoping they're going to make a breakthrough
and I was sitting
and
there
score.
next to you, and you were getting very worked up about things. And
Sure.
was, I thought as a spectacle, it was quite good. And the thing that I was mostly pleased about as well, because I was very nervous going down there, was that there was now a roof on that stand that we sat in, because I was worried I was going to be sitting there getting stoked.
Sure was, absolutely right. Look, it was great hospitality, and I want to thank Crystal Palace enormously. We said before the game, let's make sure we get our travel arrangements right.
Yes.
Because it's not Crystal Palace's fault, but it's a terrible place to get to.
It really is.
So we went straight on a fast train down to Croydon, then grabbed a cab to get round.
We didn't quite go straight on a fast train down to Croydon. We met for a little meeting before the train.
But then we got a fast train down to Croydon, if you see what I mean. But even then, getting a taxi in Croydon, which is in South London...
Do you remember that guy who tried to get in a taxi with us?
Yeah.
There was a guy who was clearly from Liverpool.
Yeah.
I can only describe him as an Everton fan.
Hey, can I share a cab with you lads?
But you come out of East Croydon Station and there's a kind of what can loosely be described as this cab rank, but it's not very clear which end of it you're supposed to queue, right?
No, it's true.
So as we were about to get into this cab, this guy staggers up.
Yeah.
And he's carrying a can of Strongbow.
He is, yeah.
And it's now, about 12:30 in the morning? Or 12:30 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And he said exactly those words, to which the ever-faithful Everton fan, Mr. Parry, said, "Oh, no, sorry, mate, we've got to pick somebody up on the way there."
Got to pick somebody up on
and
the
he
way.
then started getting quite nasty and accused us of stealing his cab. Said that he was there before us.
So jumped the queue and you jumped the queue, you're in front of me and all this kind of stuff. Anyway, it worked out in the end and it was great. And as I say, that's one of the most impressive restaurants I've ever seen in a football ground.
Yeah. I've never seen a better restaurant in a football ground.
No, neither
I've
have
been
I.
to every football ground in the country,
Neither
so
have
no
I.
doubt there will be people that will say, "Oh, the one at Tottenham's
Oh,
better."
no,
or
I've
the
been
one
to a
at Chelsea's
few. I've been
better."
to a few, and that is, there's some great restaurants inside Old Trafford, for instance. Great restaurant where I go at Everton, the Joe Mercer Lounge. But it was a class. That restaurant literally could have been plucked out of central London.
Yeah,
it was.
And it had a nice mix of fans in it as
nice
well.
mix
People
of fans.
who obviously, presumably, can sign up and become members
Absolutely.
of it and all that. I thought it was great. Really good day.
Yeah, it was smashing.
Yeah.
But getting home seems to be more of a problem. How did you end up staggering off with somebody who wanted to give you a lift in a car that was parked 2.5 miles away?
The getting home thing is a bit of a sore point, actually, with me, because I'm rather upset, to be honest, that you hadn't laid on some kind of a car for us.
Well, why?
Well, why not?
Oh, it's my responsibility to
Well,
lay
it
on a
should be.
car for
Well, you invited me. If I invite you to a football ground, to an event, I would make sure that you could get home
I made
safely.
it so easy for you to get there. I met you at Victoria Station in London, right? I bought you a couple of drinks. I put you on a train to get down there. Put you in a cab to get there, and you can't even get yourself home.
Well, because I didn't realise it was going to be like, trying to cross the bloody North Pole. The point is, we came outside.
Unbelievable.
Right? We came outside. You were being a bit argumentative, it seems to me, as I recall, with a couple of your friends that you'd invited across as well, because they wanted to take you home.
Yeah.
Because they thought perhaps it was the best thing to do, right? I don't know why they thought that.
Yeah.
But I went to this nearby cab company, which is right outside the ground, and I said, "Can you get me a cab to East Croydon Station, please?" Which I guess is about, 2 or 3 miles away.
Yeah.
And they went, about an hour.
An hour, yeah, that's helpful.
And it was already about 7 o'clock, right? And there'd been 2 guys who were hanging around who had been very great big fans of yours and mine.
Yes.
And had offered to take you home.
Very nice of them, yeah.
You'd said to them, I'm only going to go with you if you bring the car right here.
Well,
right?
That's because they couldn't tell where the car was.
They said it was parked a little while away. And so they were getting a bit nonplussed with you. And then you started offering them money to bring the car. And they said, "No, well, we can't because we have to go and find the car." Anyway, in the end, I just thought, well, this is ridiculous. I'm going to walk up to the main road. So you went with them,
yeah?
No, I didn't go with them. No. I said, I'm going to walk up to the main road and I'm going to either find a black cab, which people said I could find, get to London, or I'll find my way to a train station, on foot.
Yeah, just wander around Croydon until you find a railway station.
No, well, I was told that Thornton Heath Station was down to the left.
No, you weren't, you see.
Yes,
you were told
that.
Selhurst was down to the left, not Thornton Heath. Thornton Heath's miles away.
No, it isn't.
No, it is.
Well, listen, I don't think you want me to ask whether you remember much of this. But
of course I do. I'm ridiculous. Very clear.
I got up to the top of the road and I saw a bus.
Yeah.
And the bus said Elephant Castle on it, right?
You recognised the bus, yeah.
So I thought, great, I can get, I'm still in the outer regions of London. I can just get a bus to Elephant Castle. It's problematic getting a cab. So I went and stood, because I couldn't get that bus. I went and stood at the bus stop, waiting for the next bus to Elephant Castle. And then 5 minutes later, these two guys came wandering up the street.
Right. Yeah.
And they were like, "Oh, Mike, it's still here." I'm like, "Yeah, I wait for a bus." Okay, I'm thinking, I wasn't too sure how much these guys had to drink, and so I wasn't sure even if I want to get a car.
I want to get a car with them. No.
Anyway, they said, "Well,
sort of people you normally
our car is literally just up the road.
Wild drunks.
Why don't you come with us and we'll take you?" And I said, "Well, how far away is the car?" And he said, "This car's just up the road." I said, "Fine." So we start walking up the road, and we pass a couple of sets of traffic lights, and then it's like, "Oh, it's just up here on the left," and we start climbing this huge incline.
Yeah, there's a lot of hills around there.
Are we walking like to East Croydon Station at this point?
You could have been.
Eventually, they decided they'd walk past the car.
Right,
and they
so you turned around and went back.
So we turned around and went back.
Yeah, didn't you get the idea by now that something was out of control here?
Yeah, but I didn't know where I was, so I was kind of in their hands, right?
I thought you told me that, you'd covered wars in the Balkans, you've crisscrossed America for a decade, but you couldn't find your way out of Croydon back into London. You clearly couldn't.
No, I could have done, because I got out of Croydon.
Maybe you'd sort of overindulged in the sort of hospitality department during the afternoon.
Well, it was quite a fair amount of drink taken, but I was perfectly fine.
Well, speak for yourself.
Yeah, well... As I said, there are parts of the afternoon that I'm not going to go into. But anyway, so...
Why? What have you got to hide?
Well, I've got nothing to hide. I'm saying there are things about your afternoon that I'm not going to go into.
Oh, that's nice, isn't it? Hang on, who volunteered to do the tombola for the fans in the restaurant?
I thought you were asked to do it.
Well, OK, but I held the tombola barrel while you stuck your hand in to get the ticket out. So, in fact, I took the submissive role, so to speak, in the tombola organisation.
Well, that was a better idea because of the difference in our heights. If I'd held it, you wouldn't have been able to get your hand into the bin, would you?
That's
the thing.
Nonsense.
Yeah. Anyway, so finally... We finally find the car, and it's
still going on, is it? Sorry,
It's a sort of rattly old car,
I was going to say, was it some old wreck, was it?
It was a bit of a wreck, yeah. And as we get into the car, I said, "Excuse me, which one of you guys is going to drive?" Because I'm a bit concerned about how much you may have had to drink. And one of them went, "Well, I don't think I should drive. I'm absolutely bladdered." And I said, "Well, I don't really want to get in the car with you then." And then the other one said, "No, I'm fine." And I said, "OK, well, listen, how far away are we?" And he said, "Oh, we're going to take you to Thornton Heath," which was down to the right. And I said, "Well, that's where all the traffic is." I said, "Don't go that way. I don't want to sit in a traffic jam." What about Selhurst? That's to the left. He said, "Yeah." And so eventually we got in the car. Windows were steamed up, couldn't see out. I'm like, looking out the window.
I think you're taking your life in your hands
here,
Mike.
I was. I did say to the guy, I said, "By the way, I'm not sure I should even sit in the front here."
No.
But it's such a small car, I couldn't get in the back.
You couldn't get in the back of a car?
I couldn't get in the back of it.
Doesn't this prove everything I've said about your colossal weight over the years?
No, it's not that I physically couldn't get in the back.
What sort of car was it? Like a three-wheeler?
It was like a Toyota Yaris or something like that. Tiny.
Yaris.
Anyway, so just before we found Selhurst Station, just before they dropped me there, they said, "We're going to the pub, but do you want to come with us?" And I was like, "Well, how far away is that?" And they went, "It's 300 yards up the road." And I was like, given that their earlier kind of mistake about how far the car, I thought it was probably about 3 miles away. So I got out of the car.
Like 30 miles.
But I don't know who they are, but I'm going to thank them anyway for getting me safely.
And then did you get a train back into London?
Station. Well, I did eventually. The guy behind the booth, I said, "When's the next train to London Bridge seems the one I should get?" He said, "Yeah." Did he mention the fact that there was a substitute bus? No, he didn't. So I happened to see that, and I eventually waited about 20 minutes. I got back to Victoria about 8:30, 9:15.
What, in a bus?
No, on the train.
No. Well, what was the bus? What was the substitute bus all about?
I would have rather gone to London Bridge.
I see. Right, okay,
where I live.
Yeah, so you had to compromise. Well, I don't know, Mike. I take you to these places, and then when you get there, you get completely disorientated, for want of a better word.
Not at all.
You could have behaved yourself.
It was a fabulous day out.
It was.
I even patched up your friend's romance for them as well, but we'll talk maybe more about that another time.
Oh, I don't know about that.
This is Talk Sport Extra Time. It's Mike Graham and Mike Parry. More next.
Crazy, but that's how it goes. Millions of people living as ho-ho-hos.
This is Talk Sport Extra Time. I'm Mike Graham. Mr. Mike Parry is sitting beside me. And, of course, you can hear all of our podcasts on iTunes. If you go there, we'll be putting the tweets out and the links out on Facebook and Twitter and all of that. That's enough about Crystal Palace.
It is.
I don't think we need to go into it in any more depth.
Just one last thing, by the way. You're right. I did go home with a couple of my friends who are big Crystal Palace fans and who work in football. Yeah. And when leaving their house, I needed a taxi to get home, so I borrowed 20 quid off them, right? Because I said, I don't know, I'm just out of money, right? But what we'd forgotten was...
money?
I was out of money, yeah. What we'd forgotten was, right, they'd ordered a couple of pizzas. So I left with their 20 quid in my pocket, and halfway home, the phone rang, and the pizza guy had come. They didn't have any more money in the house, and he wouldn't give them the pizzas, and he went off with the pizzas. So I deprived them of having any dinner.
With friends like you.
true.
Goodness gracious me, that's awful. That's a terrible story.
I know, yeah.
Now, talking about people who are ungrateful, how about the lovely Nancy Delolio,
Well,
who has been talking about how upset she is about Sven Göran Eriksson, who's on TalkSport later on today, actually, with Colin Murray.
Is he? That's good, because his book's come out, of course, and he's publicising the book, and that book is a revelation, because when you read the serialisation of the books I've read already, I've no idea how he found any time to manage the England football team.
Well, that was always the sense of it, wasn't it?
Yes, exactly, yeah. He seemed to be so active with his social life, you know, for want of a better word.
Yeah.
But Nancy, to me, was always this mysterious, beautiful, dark-haired woman, you know. But she
was a bit past her sell-by date, though, to be fair.
No, that's a terrible thing to say. Absolutely not mature woman. What's wrong with that?
Well, there's nothing wrong with it if you're as old as you are, but I mean, you know,
Hang on, I'm about the same age as you.
She was really. She was very much put together with an awful lot of makeup and Botox. And
I don't care about that. Makeup looks good on a woman like her. She's got fantastic bone structure in her face.
Yeah,
long, dark,
you need to make
hair.
£1 million a year just to pay for the makeup.
Well,
so much of it on.
I'm not sure about
it all on.
But anyway, she says that Sven's not a gentleman for exposing. So he didn't expose any secrets. He just said that she became very high maintenance.
Well, and talks about their relationship in a way which was very unchivalrous, I would say.
Well, I think it was unchivalrous as well, really, and quite unnecessary. But, she actually defended herself by saying, well, of course, if the light's wrong in a restaurant, I complain about it. Yeah. Of course, if the champagne isn't up to the right temperature, I complain about it. What do you think I'm going to do in life if things aren't right for me?
That's what we call high maintenance.
Well, that's diva-ish, isn't it? You know, so, I mean, you can imagine that gets your nerves. But what the amazing thing about that book was, and it's gone a stage further now, because she's now saying today, I might think about suing Sven, because she's hinting that they had a confidentiality agreement at the end, whereas when all the money was divided out, i.e. Sven gave her a load of dosh, right?
And why did he have to do that, by the way?
Well, because she wouldn't move out of his house, for one thing.
Yeah, but the point is that they weren't married.
No.
So, and he's already said in the book that, she was already, married when they got together. So he had no obligation to give her any money. I think she should be grateful.
Come on, he pulled her out of a marriage anyway, and then a few months later tried to give her back to her husband because he said she'd become very high maintenance. So, no, of course he had an obligation to her.
Why did he have to give her any money?
Well, because he'd taken her away from a secure lifestyle with a very wealthy lawyer in Italy. So he couldn't just then say, I've had enough use of you now, Nancy, just get lost, please.
My point is that, she should actually keep her mouth shut and be grateful that he didn't try and, do her over. And actually, she did pretty well out of the deal.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at it, she clearly was, what's the word I'm looking for?
Money grabbing.
No, she was cheated on a lot of times by Sven, wasn't she? And I'm not sure.
She didn't mind about that, though. That's the point.
Well, she did and she didn't. I mean, the point, she had a very public face on it. She used to, when Sven had a new girlfriend, became public, she'd always come out and say, "Oh, the poor girl. I feel so sorry for the poor little girl. She thinks that Svenny loves her, and Svenny doesn't love her. Svenny loves me.
This is the point,
because I am so beautiful. Right. All men love me."
And the fact is, she was actually not as much as the focus of his attention as he would have liked to. She would have liked to have thought.
Well, it's pretty obvious, isn't it?
Yeah, but the point is that there's a lot of French women and Italian women like this, and they kind of tolerate the fact that their stupid little boy runs off with other women, but in the end he always comes back to her.
Oh, really?
But I think she got this one
wrong. You know about this, do you?
I do know a lot about it, actually.
Oh, really? Where'd you learn all that from, then?
Well, my series of life experiences.
Oh, right. Sort of...
Well, you might remember a guy that we used to know in New York called Dudley Freeman.
Dudley, I remember Dudley very well.
Do you remember how Dudley used to operate?
Yeah, of course I do. He used to hire young Polish girls to work in his business and then have romances with them on a consistent basis.
And what do you think his wife used to say about that?
Well, she lived up in the country and didn't really care.
What was her nationality?
She was... Was she Polish?
French,
that's right. She was French, that's right. Yeah, absolutely right.
And she used to say... I don't care what Dudley gets up to because he always comes back to me.
What she used to say was, she'd say, "Oh, Dudley, he's like a butterfly.
He's like a stupid little boy."
He's a stupid little boy and a butterfly, and he's all over these little girls. Mind you, some of those birds, if you remember, some of those girls who were Polish extraction, right? Then when Dudley used to mess them around and, one of them suddenly found he had another woman in the other room in the same apartment, she kicked the door down, didn't she? And you'd often go around to Dudley's house and find all these holes in walls and doors and
it's all a bit tricky.
Washing machines ripped out in the kitchen and all that. And it's because all these young girls, he had a fantastic track record. All these young girls who were being cuckolded by Dudley would take their revenge. He told me once, because he used to be a reporter on the Sunday Express in this country, and he was once found red-handed with a woman on the back seat of his car in a lay-by during the daytime, romancing this lady when her husband suddenly pulled up in a car behind and jumped out with wielding an axe to sort him out.
Anyway, Mrs. Freeman eventually took him off to France, and they live in this massive, great big chateau somewhere down near Toulouse. Anyway,
he's known as the whinging Englishman there.
He certainly is.
The whinging Englishman.
Now, you've got much to say about the whole business with BT Sport, and we were talking earlier about the loss of what you might call the romance and the soul of football. I'm saying that basically the romance of football has been lost many years ago.
Rubbish.
The soul of football is dead and buried, because if you watched anything to do with that Bishop Stortford game, which was being billed as this, great old-fashioned FA Cup first round.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you've got an interest in either one of those teams, you're not going to watch it, are you?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I didn't see it, actually, but you said that Adrian Charles was taking it all a bit light-heartedly.
Yeah, I mean, he was obviously horrified at the fact that he had to stand on this pitch where you could actually see out of the top of the stadium, because they kept panning across to the Stansted air traffic control tower. Only just
so the stand was only like a little bit higher than a man standing up. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And he was clearly very embarrassed to have to do that. But presumably that's all ITV have got now, is the FA Cup after this deal.
Well, it's interesting. I spoke to Andy Townsend on the way to that game. Andy was in his car and going. He was doing co-commentary, obviously. And, there is still romance in the FA Cup. But it's interesting what you were saying earlier about the romance of the FA Cup. And what's also interesting is the BT deal, an amazing deal, which means they've got Champions League from 2015 onwards.
And all to themselves, right?
All to themselves, absolutely right. They might also, by then, have bid for more Premier League games. Yeah. But it leaves ITV with just England home games. So that, in a sense, means, I don't know, are they going to get in or get out of the competition? But what it might mean is, it might mean that when the bidding rights come up now for other football that's available, and one of those competitions is the FA Cup, people might start paying proper money for it and elevate the FA Cup back to the status it had before the Champions League came along.
ITV also get some Premier League games as well if they wish to bid for them?
Well, they could, but I mean, I think you're talking now about a huge amount of cost. I mean, when you looked at the figures, Mike, in that BT Sky deal, interesting that the capital valuation of Sky is about 7.2 billion, and the capital valuation of BT is about 18.4 billion. I didn't realise that BT is a company nearly 3 times the size of Sky.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, BT's been massive for years, and it's all been kind of leading up to this. And this is why it's interesting how they're structuring all of this, where they're saying to people, well, if you're a broadband customer, then we will give you all this stuff free. They're obviously going to have to change that a little bit, aren't they, with all these rights that they've bought?
Well,
because they're saying they're going to have to boost, they're going to have to give free to air some of the games, aren't they?
Well, I think the final is already, they've already said the final's going to be free to air, haven't they? Because, otherwise people feel trapped out. But it's astonishing. I think once you're hooked and you've got Champions League football, if they suddenly say, well, you're going to have to pay for it now, despite the fact you're a broadband customer, that could happen, I don't know. You're not going to turn it down.
I don't know if people are going to suddenly get BT broadband just to watch football, or whether, I don't know which one is going to drive the other, really.
I did. At one of my places, I've got BT as my broadband supplier, and I get the football free. The other one is supplied by Sky, actually, television, telephone, and
can you not use the both
and broadband
in both places, though?
No, you have to have 2 separate accounts, but it was simple to get it all done. But look, that's what competition's all about. You read Henry Winter in the Telegraph, this morning's Telegraph, and he says that BT came in on the blind side, and hit Sky. And very unusual move for Sky to get BT.
I wonder whether James
rights.
Murdoch was put in charge of Sky, and I wonder whether this is another kind of blunder on his part, because he didn't exactly steward News International very well, and he left that, and he's now been put in charge of Sky. And you wonder whether he's been a bit slow off the mark here.
I think it's very difficult to work out, who was running things at Sky during that tumultuous period, which the News of the World was closed down, all that sort of thing. That's been a right mark. What do you think about that referee who was told that he can't support Aston Villa and referee a West Bromwich Albion game, huh?
Well, I mean, Mark Halsey's writing in the papers, isn't he, saying that refs can be fans just as much as anybody else.
I think they can. And
Mark Halsey thinks that, obviously, because he's always been on the phone to Sir Alex Ferguson and Jose Mourinho whenever he wants.
Well, didn't he go on holiday at Jose Mourinho's expense? Yes, he did. Yeah. And he asked Sir Alex to try and back up the referee who was accused of...
Was that some kind of dog impersonation?
Sorry, no, it's just that's a memory type physical
twitch.
Physical thought pattern thing. Right. I just go.
do it
thinking.
too often, please.
I know, yeah. But, no, what happened was it was a referee. He was accused, wasn't he, of making allegedly a racist comment about a Chelsea player, which, of course,
Andre Mariner, his name
withdrawn. Andre Mariner's the referee we're talking about.
Yeah.
And by the way, I thought Chelsea were terribly, terribly fortunate to get that last-minute penalty.
That was a penalty.
It was never a penalty.
I don't know why people don't think it was a penalty.
No, Mike, it was never a penalty.
I've watched it over and over and over
Mike,
again.
you could watch it a million times, but you have such a lack of understanding of football, mate. You still wouldn't be able to make out what was right and what was wrong.
The man is running into the area at high speed,
rubbish.
And he is pushed, so he falls over.
No, once again, you've given in to the idea of physical contact in football matches should be banned altogether. Absolutely outrageous.
When did I say that?
I
didn't say it should be banned.
I think the tackle from behind should be reintroduced. Shoulder charging should be introduced. Do you remember the Andy Gray goal in the 1984 Cup final? Steve Sherwood, the goalkeeper, bang, shoulder charged him.
Don't remember it.
And went, well, I do. I remember
good
it.
for you.
Yeah.
Surprised you remember anything that far away.
Oh, really? Yeah. Well, I'm surprised you
can't remember what happened on Saturday.
I was about to say, you can't remember anything before last Saturday afternoon by the sound of it, from this ridiculous nonsense of wandering around South London trying to find some guy to give you a lift home in a beaten-up car that you couldn't even get into.
I don't know why you keep changing the subject, right? The bottom line is that, we're talking here about, realism in football. That's what I deal in,
Realism.
okay? You are one of those people who doesn't deal in realism because
What do I deal in?
I could see from the way that you were reacting to that Everton performance on Saturday as, you thought that they played well, you thought that getting a 0-0 result at Crystal Palace was somehow a good result.
It was a banana skin. It was a banana skin. When a team's gone 7 consecutive defeats, right, they're going to break out of that at some stage. They're in a tricky position at the moment with no permanent manager been appointed. The Chris Coleman thing seems to have gone away a bit. Right. Who's in the frame now? Is it Alex McLeish? We don't really know. But
They're going to appoint somebody soon, aren't they?
means those players are playing for their futures to some future boss, right? Yeah. So they've got to be up for it. So I'm actually not that disappointed. I could foresee, a shockingly horrible sort of result there and Everton getting beaten. So I'm not that. I'm not that disappointed.
Very good. That's the problem.
Everton are very good. Everton are very good.
No, we can talk about that.
Well, how come they've got 3 players in the England squad then?
You see how exacerbated you get about just ordinary nothing, right?
No. I'm telling you, they've got 3 players in the England squad, right?
So Southampton.
Yeah, OK, but Southampton
are
only
better than Everton at the moment as well.
Southampton are doing very well. They're having a very good season. This Lallana guy, I haven't seen much of him, have you? But he is outstanding.
He scored a great goal at the weekend.
That's the first time I sort of noticed him because there was lots of speculation on he was going to get into the England squad. You know what I mean? So I kept my beady eye on him, and I have to say the match report back for me would be a 9 out of 10. I thought he was very good, but Ricky Lambert is going to be like a very solid Plan B type player. Right.
I haven't asked you about England. We'll talk about England on Thursday. We're talking about referees at the moment.
Yeah, OK.
You're going from one subject to another. That's got a crazed lunatic.
But I've given you my view on referees. I think referees are incorruptible. I think referees are like judges. Well, I've just said it now.
OK.
I think referees, like judges, are incorruptible. I believe that the standard of refereeing in this country is so good, the best in the world.
So how do you explain the referee that gave the Ramirez penalty then?
Because he was unsighted, or he got it wrong, or he was victim again of a player going down too easily. So
it's not the ref's fault then?
It's a bit like old Piers Morgan's campaign about guns, isn't it? He says guns don't kill, it's the people who fire the guns that kill. So my view is...
that's not what Piers Morgan says, actually. That's what the NRA says.
No.
No, you've got it completely round the wrong way.
Right, that's what the NRA said.
The National Rifle Association says that.
In the Piers Morgan argument, OK? Don't be pedantic.
I have to point out that you've made completely the opposite
I haven't.
conclusion
there. And let me just tell you this. It's not the referees who get it wrong, it's the cheating players who go down, which causes the problem in football, and the Ashley Young situation we all know about. So we've got to get that sorted.
So you think that the referees in this country are great?
I think the referees are brilliant. Now, if that had happened on the continent, right, and they said, this referee...
in Italy, questions might have been asked.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. Now, I don't wish to be rude to Italian referees or French referees or any referees on the continent, but it is a fact that when, the old dive in the penalty box and corruption amongst clubs first emerged in the game 50 or 60 years ago, it did come from the continent. It didn't come from this country. It's like a continental shift, if you see what I mean, towards the values which have been suborned on the continent over the years.
Been what?
Suborned.
Suborned?
Yes, absolutely.
What are you spelling that?
What do you mean? How is he spelling it?
Well, what word is that? I've never heard of it.
Well, you should get a dictionary out and look it up and find out what it's about.
We haven't got time for that. Why don't you just tell me?
I'm telling you,
the word is spelled.
Where it grew up, where it originated, where it all came from. If you don't know that, man, you shouldn't really be sitting in this studio spouting English because you clearly don't have enough knowledge of the blinking language in which you deal.
Thank you very much indeed. Mr. Mike Porky Parry, I've got no idea what he was going on about for the last 10 minutes. If you have any clue about that, perhaps you could email me and I'll be able to explain it to myself later on. He'll be back, of course, on Thursday night prior to the first England game against Chile. Let's hope that they've sorted out that problem at the St George's Park Centre of Excrement by then. This is TalkSport.